Right, hello everybody and welcome to the 5th Startup Seminar brought to you by City Ventures at City University of London. And this week we've got a pretty good seminar coming up. But before we get into all of that, what I would like to do is to give you a few notices about what's coming up so that you've got that on your radar and we don't miss it at the end, because I'm sure we'll have lots of questions at the end. So let me just share my screen. I know sometimes this is a painful process. Here we go. There we go. Share screen, this one. Ta-da. So, startup seminars, here we go. So just to add to your list of things to do this week, and here we are approaching another lockdown, I should add. So what better way to spend some time indoors than listening to another brilliant seminar? And we've got a few more things coming up. So next week's seminar, which you should definitely sign up to, is all about making money and how to raise funds. And our guest this evening can tell you a little bit about that too, maybe in her journey as a founder. And we've got some of our own, as well as some of our very, very good guests. So we've got Gina, who's the founder of Anaria Technologies, and they're about to launch their first product, Un, which is a plaque checker. She'll be leading the conversation with Tom Britton, who's founder of Syndicate Room, and Zibet Doncheva, who is an analyst at Amplifier, and Akash, who's recently left the business school to take up his role as an analyst at Augmentum FinTech, which is wonderful. So they'll be having a conversation about how you can raise funds. So don't miss that. It's all in the same place where you signed up for this, so it shouldn't be hard to find. Then we've got our new event. So we thought it would probably be a good idea to try and group some of you together. As you're having all of these wonderful ideas and finding these problems to fix, why not find a founder that can help you build it, or maybe fix it, or make it? And this event is being purposefully designed so that you can try and meet somebody with a different skill set, somebody that can help you build whatever it is you're trying to do. This is taking place next week. It's an afternoon event, but we're going to kick off with a talk first with the wonderful founders of Toast Ale. Those of you who enjoy a drink or two will probably have heard of Toast Ale. They're a social enterprise and they use bread in the brewing process. And we've got two of the co-founders. We've got Rob Wilson and Louisa Zane, who will be talking about their relationship together as founders and why it's great to have somebody with different skills to you. And then we've also got our wonderful City Spark competition. However, we've changed it slightly this year. Normally, this would be a marketplace hosted in the City Bar, but obviously due to restrictions, that won't be happening in that way this time. So we've decided to refocus the competition into COVID-19 recovery. And we want to hear from you and anybody out there who's got an idea to help those who are affected by COVID-19, whether it be a business or an individual or a set of people or the environment in some way. Then this competition is for you, and there are 4 pots of £1,000 to be won for this. So please sign up for that and enter your idea. You will see that we've nicely structured it so that you could go and meet the co-founder, then enter your idea here. So please do that. And if you haven't done so already, then please sign up to meet one of my team who will be able to talk through any of those ideas that you might have. Or if you just want to find out more about what we offer, then please drop in. You can sign up to an appointment with one of the team. And the idea is that you complete your wonderful badges on your laptop, and then you'll get the reputation that you need as an entrepreneur. And all of that can be found on the lovely website, hitting the start button, which will take you through to all of these events, and they're easy to sign up with. Most of them are on Eventbrite. The new one for the Find a Founder event is actually in Hopin, where we're going to be using some of the networking tools. So exciting times for everybody. If you aren't already following us, check us out on Insta. We're getting a very good following there, and Taylor, who manages the channel, is doing a brilliant job. That's the best way to find out about our events and any of our companies. And then also LinkedIn. You can find us there on LinkedIn just by searching City Ventures. Sadly, on Instagram, somebody already had City Ventures, so we had to go for City Uni Ventures. It was too expensive to take off their hands, but please follow along. Right, that's enough about all of those other things that are coming up, because now it's about tonight's event, which is proudly brought to you by our wonderful Sophie Adelman, who is a co-founder and board member and director of WhiteHat. And she's going to be telling us a bit about her journey as a founder. Sophie, do you mind if I read a little bit of bio about you? Is that okay? That doesn't seem too formulaic. Okay.
I can also give you a bit of a spiel if that would be helpful, but if you would like to read a bio, you can go ahead.
Oh, no, well, I think it would be better coming from you. I've got one here, but maybe what you've got upstairs is much better.
Sure, I'm happy to introduce myself if that's better. So I'm Sophie. I grew up in the UK. I'm British, and I started my career actually in finance before moving into executive search. Briefly, I worked for Egon Zehnder, which I wasn't expecting to do, but actually it was a great introduction to how to identify talent, how companies think about building out their teams. I did that. I went to business school out in the States and came back and worked back in finance again in order to pay off my student debt, because American business school is incredibly expensive. And then I actually started working at a company called Hired.com when it was about 45 people. This was my first foray into the startup world, and I joined them as their first international employee. I would say they took a bit of a punt on me. I think I took a little bit of a punt on them. It was an unknown company in the UK, but what I liked about it was they were trying to approach the process of recruitment in a new way, actually flipping it on its head. And I'm going to talk a bit more about that later. We built that organization out to about 20 plus people in the UK and acquired a French company. And I was there for about 2.5 years. And then I met my co-founder, Ewan, and we built WhiteHat from an idea of how to build an outstanding alternative to university to a company of, well, it must be about 180 people now, but it's grown super fast over the last 3.5 years. I actually transitioned out of my role at WhiteHat in the summer. I decided that I wanted to go and build another company. So I'm still on the board there. I'm very supportive as a co-founder. My co-founder Ewan continues to lead the business. And I've just actually started at Index Ventures as an entrepreneur in residence for the next 6 months or so. So really excited to tell you about any of that if you want to hear about it too.
Fantastic. I mean, it's very, very accurate to the bio I've got here, actually. So you did a much better job of delivering it. And that's really interesting in terms of your transition from, I suppose it was semi-corporate world, from the exec search into startup, into starting your own. And we see that quite a lot. Actually, you get the bug, don't you, once you've worked within one or been supporting one as a mentor in some capacity, that it's very quickly you get attracted to that way of life.
Right.
Is that true of your journey?
Yeah, I think a lot of my friends started working in startups because I was fortunate enough to spend time out in California, and all my friends were working for Uber when it was in its sort of high growth stage, and for Lyft and Airbnb and stuff. And so I was hearing about what they were doing. It just sounded so exciting. They were flying all over the world. They were getting to build businesses themselves. I was working for a finance company called Rick Capital, and it was an incredible place to work. I learned a huge amount. It was actually very useful for learning how to run a business because you're looking at lots of different businesses all the time. And I actually had the job of doing strategic investments. So I was kind of creating businesses within the business. And that meant that I got the experience of sort of building businesses, but within quite an old school organization. And that definitely gave me the bug. And I realized that what I loved doing was building businesses rather than actually investing in them. So,
and that's also a number of the founders that we've had on have expressed that same. The build part is the best bit, and the creation.
It's definitely the most stressful bit, but it's
How stressed are you feeling now, then, Sophie? Now that
I'm super relaxed right now because
fantastic.
I'm no longer on the day-to-day, but I think it becomes, I'm not sure I'd say I was stressed most of the time. I think I was just absorbed. It took over my life, and I will let another business take over my life again, but I just needed a little bit of a reprieve before I threw myself back in, because I also have a small children, two kids, 4 and 19 months, and I haven't been around very much over the last 4 years because, you know, I'm always taking calls in the evenings, I'm always traveling and stuff, and so it's been nice to be able to spend a few months with them.
Yeah, same actually. They're about the same age actually, my children. So I can relate in that respect. Very exhausted most of the time.
Very exhausting.
I think they're having a great time, but from my side, I'm also having a lovely time, but I'm also way more tired all of the time. So in terms of when you were growing up, so you mentioned earlier that you didn't expect to be on this pathway, but what was it? Was there anything in particular that interested you when you were younger that may have complemented where you are now?
I was always very industrious. I would use that word. I was always putting stuff together. I went to uni, and when I was at uni, at the end, they put together a kind of book. It was still in the book days where we, you know, everyone's pictures and stuff. And everyone got a quote. And my quote was something like, "Don't worry, I'll handle it." So I've always been the kind of person who's sort of seen a project and just sort of grabbed it with both hands and run with it. Both my parents are doctors. I don't think they really understand what I do now still. So I didn't really grow up with any sort of entrepreneurial family members or anyone to sort of inspire me. I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was really until probably I was in my mid to late 20s. It just wasn't something that you did straight out of school or uni. And so it's something that I sort of come to later in life. So when people say you're kind of born with the entrepreneurial gene, you have to be selling, lemonade outside your house from the age of 6. I don't actually think that's true. I think you need to be somebody who, actually there are lots of different types of entrepreneurs, but you have to be somebody who has big dreams, somebody who is willing to work very hard to achieve those dreams. You don't necessarily need to be optimistic. I think there's this assumption that you need to always be overly optimistic the whole time, not see any of the hurdles. I think you need to be realistic. It's no good if you're going to be the person who always sees problems. You have to be a solution-focused person, and you need to be able to sell. You need to be able to sell your dreams, your visions, your ideas, your path to other people, because if you want to be a founder, you need to get other people inspired enough to follow you. And I think that's a key thing that's often overlooked. People always think, I need to be the ideas person who comes up with the original idea. I need to be the product person. Actually, there's a huge amount of sales in startup world. If that's you, I think it's something to look at.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Sales is often forgotten, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's everything that you do, in almost every scenario that you have, whether it be a startup or in your working life, you will have to be selling at least, whether it's for that new computer that you need with a new camera, like I had to do, all the way through to pitching your idea and your dreams to an investor. It's selling and being convincing and being able to read people and understand how to negotiate that if it isn't quite what you're after. So yeah, that's a really, really good point. And we've got our final seminar focuses on pitching, but actually it will also relate a lot to sales too.
Well, I think one piece of advice I give any of the people on the seminar that I wish somebody had given me is, if you get the chance to do a negotiation course, take it. If you get the chance to do a sales course with a sales leader or go and work for a sales leader, I think it's a great, opportunity and something that everyone should have the chance to do. I think it gives you a rounded experience. But there are very few places that actually teach sales or teach sales well. So I think it's there's a missed opportunity there for an entrepreneur to go after sales training.
I think you're right. Yeah. I think the best place I was sold to was a car show sales room. Yeah, that was tough to negotiate. They won in the end, as they always do. But anyway, that brings me into, so we've just talked a bit about your skills, and what we've been doing is trying to help people identify with the type of entrepreneur. And we're not being too prescriptive, but we've got 3 personas that we use. One is a thinker, so that, like you described, probably the ideas person, but less of the doer. The maker, who is typically tech focused, and someone that would actually get hands-on and design a product, and then a fixer, the person that kind of does everything in between, and is the doer, I suppose. Is there any persona in there that relates to you, or maybe a couple of them do?
I think everyone will have a bit of all three. I'm probably the fixer. So at WhiteHat, I ran everything from product and engineering through our operations, which for WhiteHat as an apprenticeship business meant all of our training, all of our coaches, basically a bit like running a mini university, the operations of a university, people operations, marketing, the talent matching side of things, and at one point sales as well. I have some more of a background in sales, so I've run a lot of the teams, but I like building. So the making piece is like how do we get from A to B? How do once I know what I want to create, how do I do it? That's something I think I'm really good at. And then but the fixing part of it is the problem solving. You can throw pretty much anything at me and I'll have a crack.
Well, it sounds like you're a mixer, maybe, if I'm going to hybrid. The mixer, yeah, the maker, fixer, mixer.
I'll be a mixer, I like that.
A mixer, yeah. Not a faker, yeah. Although that's important too sometimes. Anyway, we've touched on WhiteHat, and you've described, I mean, WhiteHat is hugely successful and has had brilliant success stories with investment, team growth. It is a scale up, isn't it? And quite a rapidly growing one. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how that came to be? I know it started with a discussion with a certain Ewan Blair.
Yeah, so my co-founder Ewan and I met in early 2017. He'd actually been thinking about WhiteHat and had started a business thinking about how do you create better apprenticeships. And we sat down for a coffee. We were introduced actually randomly by his wife, who saw me speaking on a panel for sales leaders, female sales leaders. And she was like, what you're talking about is the same thing my husband's talking about. Can I get you guys together? Which was a strange introduction, but it was great. So I thought, fine, I'm happy to go and talk to him, give him some advice. I'm going to start my own thing. That was my plan. And sort of half-hour coffee turned into sort of a 3-hour chat where we were drawing all over pieces of paper, and realized that we were very aligned and decided to build WhiteHat together. So when you talk about sort of the co-founder matching, I think one of the key things that Ewan and I shared was obviously a shared vision of what we wanted to build the business to be, this kind of desire to change the world, really. We wanted to create something that was socially impactful, but which was very commercially successful. That was very important. We didn't want to build a charity. We wanted to build an organization that could be self-sustaining, that could grow internationally. We had very big ambitions, both of us. We also shared the same values, and the values were something that we actually created very early on in the WhiteHat journey. We sort of came up with the mission and the vision. The mission was to create a diverse group of future leaders. The vision was to build an outstanding alternative to university. So we saw that vision as being how we achieve that social mission. And then underpinning all of that were these 8 values of the kind of people that we wanted to be, the kind of people we wanted to hire, the kind of people who would be successful in our organization, and the way that we would work. And being a values-driven business allowed us to more easily make decisions. And it also kept the whole business aligned throughout the journey so far, and it continues to be that way to date. So I think when you're looking for a co-founder, alignment in terms of ambition level and what you want to achieve is really important, because some people want a lifestyle business and some people want to change the world, and those are quite different things. Neither is wrong, but they are quite different experiences. And the other one is around values. And the only way you can really figure out somebody's values is to talk about them and then to see them demonstrate those values. And I think if you get that click, then you have a good co-founder. But co-founder relationships change over time, and you know, it's a bit like a marriage. You need to maintain them. And then, you know, over time, you know, things change, and one of you may want to go and start something else. So I think it's also important to have a conversation up front about what you want to achieve out of the experience as well.
Definitely, that's very, very good advice. If anybody's interested in those values, they're on the WhiteHat website, aren't they? I think I've
Yeah.
been looking at it today, with a very good video of the team as well, describing what WhiteHat does. Right, okay, I think that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Sophie. Let's talk about customers then. And shall I hand over to you?
Sure. I'll share my screen with all of you. So I don't have too many slides because I know death by PowerPoint is not the best way to engage people. And I'm afraid I didn't go all glamorous with the design. I can actually make better slides, but I hope you'll forgive me for this. So building customer loyalty. So I know the title of the seminar was originally sort of how to build a fan base and build loyal customers, but I'm actually going to focus mainly on the second part of the title, building loyal customers, and specifically talk about the why, the how, and the how do you know of that. So why is customer loyalty important? How do you build customer loyalty? And how do you know if you've built customer loyalty? How do you measure that? And I think I'm going to talk about it particularly in the context of the businesses that I've had most experience with, which are marketplace businesses, where you don't have one customer, but two. And that's really important. We'll come back to that in a second, because when you've got two customers, you really need to think very carefully about who's your primary customer and whose interests are you going to serve first. We'll come back to that in a minute. The reason I'm also going to focus on this is because for the businesses I've actually been involved in, building a fan base only actually comes once you have loyal customers who love you and become kind of advocates or fans of the business. I know there are businesses who've actually leveraged a fan base to build a business on top of that, to commercialize their fan base. And I think an example would be someone like Glossier, the beauty brand. They built a business off the back of the success of Emily Weiss's blog Into the Gloss, and she created this incredible community of people who just loved what she talked about and the way she talked about beauty and identity. And off the back of that, they created products to service that community. So they use the community as a way to come up with new product ideas, and I think they did an incredible job of that. But it's quite unusual. Most companies that I know focus on building customer loyalty, and then they either create community which supports the group of customers, or they're able to sort of build a fan base off the back of that. People who really advocate for it are brand ambassadors. So that's what I'm going to focus on today. But kind of before we kick off, I know I gave a brief introduction. I wasn't quite sure that I was going to get an introduction as long as that. So I thought I'd just tell you a bit more about myself. As I mentioned, Hired was my first foray into the startup world, and I was there for about 2.5 years, and then left to join my co-founder with WhiteHat. Hired is a two-sided marketplace, and it's a technical recruitment platform. So what we did was connect technical talent like developers with companies that wanted to hire them. And what's interesting about the Hired model is it kind of flipped the recruitment process on its head. Normally, when you're looking for a job, you actually apply to companies for those jobs. You have to write a cover letter, you send your CV, and I'm sure many of you have, applied for internships or jobs, and it can take over your life. I mean, it's a full-time job looking for a job. And the company gets to decide who they interview and who they end up hiring. And that normally happens because there's a huge amount of supply, in other words, candidates, and not as much demand. So there's an imbalance there. But what's interesting with technical talent is that actually there are more companies trying to hire developers and product managers and designers than there are really high quality talent. Now that's starting to change. There's been a huge investment in technical education and training, and more people retraining to become developers. But it does mean that actually this is a supply constrained market. And because of that, Hired decided to create a model where companies would actually have to make interview requests to the candidate, and the candidate would be in control. So it was a different model of recruitment. And what was also interesting there was that we had to think about these two customers and think about which one we were going to serve first. So Hired was a really interesting experience, and I'll come back to that in a second. With WhiteHat, again, we're building this outstanding alternative to university via apprenticeships. And the idea for WhiteHat really came about because Ewan and I were passionate about trying to change the way that people got into the best careers. And we thought if we could do that, we could actually change the makeup of the companies, the best companies in the world, and change the makeup of the board and make more diverse organizations. Because we felt that although university can be a facilitator of social mobility, sometimes it can also be a blocker too. That might be because somebody doesn't feel they can take on the cost of going to university. Maybe they don't have people around them who aspire to go to university. Maybe they don't feel they can get the grades because they don't go to a good enough school. Or maybe they just don't want to go to university. Maybe they just want to learn on the job. And we felt that it wasn't right, that there wasn't an outstanding path for those people, a prestigious path that would rival the best universities. And so WhiteHat kind of had three main components. The first was a recruitment platform to match high quality, high potential non-graduates with opportunities at the world's best companies, ranging from Warner Brothers to Facebook to BP, and also a bunch of startups and scale-ups as well. And then train them in some professional careers. So data science, software engineering, digital marketing, whilst they were on the job. And we built a training organization that would support that. And we built these incredible apprenticeships that are really game changing in the way that they support and develop those young people. And the final part of the WhiteHat journey was community. And that's something I'm going to talk a bit more about. But we felt if you were going to create an alternative path to university, one of the things that people go to university for is that social experience, that ability to create the networks and the social capital that is so important to your success in your career. It opens many doors for professional development or jobs, but it also is often where you make your friends. And so we wanted to create a social experience, a professional development experience, and a leadership experience for people that would be equivalent to the best university experience. And we've been doing that for 3.5 years. As I said, so WhiteHat actually raised 2 rounds of funding so far. We've raised $20 million to date in a seed and Series A, with funding led by Lightspeed Ventures, which is a US VC, and Index Ventures, which is more of a European VC, 2 of the best venture capital firms in the world. I'm happy to talk a bit more about raising funding and the challenges there. But we're still growing super fast, and we've trained about 4,000 apprentices so far across all of our programs. I decided to step back from an operating role at WhiteHat earlier this year. I left from the day-to-day in July, but I'm still a board member. And I started this week at Index Ventures. As you can see, there's a link there. I really love the Index team. I feel part of the Index family. And they asked me to be an entrepreneur in residence, which means I get to work with them and advise and support their portfolio companies, sometimes get involved in some of the due diligence that they do, and also work on another business on the side. So I'm sort of working on some ideas that I've got for another startup, because I think once you've got the startup bug, it's really hard to go and get a normal job again. It's too much fun. I'm also doing some angel investments and also some advisory work at the same time. So that's me. And as I mentioned, the thing that's really interesting about both Hired and WhiteHat is that they've both got this kind of two-sided marketplace element. They've both got a supply and demand element. They've both got 2 customers. And with that kind of two-sided marketplace, one of the key questions you need to ask yourself is, who is the primary customer? That's really important in order to be successful, because if you don't know who your primary customer is, you often end up focusing on the wrong sort of party, focusing your energy on the wrong party. So this can be a little bit of a chicken and egg situation, because you do need to focus on both. You can't neglect one customer over the other, but you do need to determine who's going to be your primary customer and whose experience you're going to elevate. I think that's the way to think about it. Whose experience are you going to elevate? Whose experience are you going to put first? Now, in the case of Hired, the company is the buyer. They're the ones who actually pay for the recruitment, and they're a customer. But the candidate actually is the primary customer. And we believe that if you gave the candidate an amazing experience, they would actually become advocates that would attract more of the best candidates. So it sort of become this upward cycle. You get the best candidates, you give them an amazing experience, they talk about you, you get more of the best candidates, and then the companies would come. It would be like bees to a honeypot. And that actually did bear out. Like we did see that the more of the best candidates we had, the more companies would want to use the platform. So that's how we, focused from the point of view of determining who was the primary customer. I'll come on to how we did that in the next section. With WhiteHat, we actually also determined that even though the employer was the one paying, it was actually going to be the apprentice or the candidate whose experience we needed to put first. Now, firstly, just like with Hired, we felt that if we could build a brand around the candidate experience and the prestige of being a WhiteHat apprentice, we could attract more of the best candidates. So people would hear about us and they'd see that we were really high quality and we were offering this amazing experience. And that would get more of the best candidates to WhiteHat, and then companies would want to hire them. Because we were really trying to change perceptions around the kind of person who would do an apprenticeship and elevate apprenticeships to being equivalent to the best universities. And then secondly, we felt that if apprentices have a great experience during their apprenticeship and they feel that the skills they're learning are valuable and they feel inspired and engaged and supported, not only will they talk about the benefits of doing an apprenticeship externally to other people, their friends, their siblings on social media, but they would actually also become champions of apprenticeships within their business. And that's really important because once you get a customer, and I'll talk about this more as we talk more about customer retention and customer loyalty, we thought that if we could get our apprentices to become champions of apprenticeships within their business, then we could encourage more people within the business to do apprenticeships, because we don't just do apprenticeships for new starters. We also do apprenticeships for people who are further on in their career. Maybe they want to career change to become a data scientist. Maybe they need to do early management training. And so we wanted to be able to upsell and cross-sell products within a business. So really focused on the apprentice experience in this. We also knew that in this world, if somebody has a bad experience of their apprenticeship, then it's likely that the company will not continue working with us, and that that bad sort of piece of feedback would become viral. Like people would tweet about us, people would post on Instagram about us, and that could really harm our brand and our reputation. And we felt that that was going to be very detrimental as a small fast-growing company. So we felt that focusing on the apprentice experience will ensure that we could grow our business. But I think it's also important to point out that we also felt that putting the apprentice's success first, which is one of our company values, was morally the right thing to do. You're dealing with somebody's life, particularly early in their career, and we felt that giving them the best experience and setting them up for the success was the right thing to do. And we always wanted to be an organization that did the right thing, and that we felt that good people would win in all circumstances. So creating high quality programs and a high quality experience was not just the right thing to do, but we actually decided that quality was going to be a differentiator for us. We wanted the whole experience of WhiteHat to be about quality. So you can see that this dynamic of two-sided marketplaces playing out in lots of other businesses too. And as you think about this idea of supply and demand and who's the primary customer, you should think about some of the businesses that also have a two-sided marketplace approach, like Airbnb or Uber or Coral Kids. And as you're reflecting on that framework of who is the primary customer, think about who do they put first? Whose experience do they put first? Okay, so now we thought about the challenge of identifying the primary customer. I think we should just go back to this framework of like, why focus on customer loyalty? How do you create customer loyalty? And how do you even know if you have? Okay, why is customer loyalty important? Well, this seems quite obvious to me, but it may not be. But the customer loyalty actually increases revenue in the long term. And that's for a few reasons. First of all, is that it's much easier to sell to existing customers. Once you already have a relationship with them, it's easier to get in the foot in the door, to have the conversations. You've got champions internally who will connect you to the right people within the business. They already know the quality of the experience of working with you. It's just much easier to offer new products and to upsell them once you have that foot in the door. I also thought this was an obvious thing to say, but actually it may not be something that's as obvious to people who don't work in sales, but acquiring customers is actually much more expensive than retaining them. So you have to spend money on marketing, you have to spend money on salespeople. The number of meetings you need to have for an enterprise customer can be 3 or more. And every time you meet with a customer, that costs you time and money. So keeping customers once you've got them should be a primary objective. It's actually better to have a smaller number of customers who love you than to just keep pouring money into the top of the funnel and having a leaky funnel. Then secondly, as we talked about advocates, well, customer advocates can really help you acquire new customers. If people love you, they talk about you. And if you think about the kind of businesses that you've bought from, whether that be clothing brands or makeup brands or restaurants even, when you have a really good experience, you want to tell people about it. You want to post it on Instagram, you want to tweet about it, you want to call your friend up and tell them, I had an amazing meal at this place, or you should go and buy those jeans. And so customer advocates help you acquire new customers, but people will only be advocates for you if they've had an amazing experience. And the third reason is that actually loyal customers are less price sensitive due to their brand loyalty. So what that means is if somebody else offers a cheaper product, they might not stray to that other customer, to that other competitor. They might stay with you even though your product or service costs more, because they think the whole experience is worth the extra cost. And so that's price sensitivity can be really important in a market where price can be a differentiator. So customer loyalty increases revenue, but retention also reduces the amount of money you need to spend, the cost for the business. So acquisition costs can be really high. Now, when you acquire customers, whether that be candidates or employers, you need to think about how you acquire them. There are lots of different ways to acquire customers. People always think about marketing. Let's put on a Facebook ad. Let's do Google AdWords. Let's send people something in the post. That is one way of acquiring people. But actually, one of the most effective ways of acquiring corporate clients is sales, direct sales, picking up the phone, calling people, going and meeting them. People buy from people that they like, who they trust, and who they have a relationship with. So, and building relationships takes time and energy, which is obviously expensive. So even though, customer acquisition is important, you don't want to be constantly acquiring new customers all the time and having customers churn. In other words, losing customers. You want to be constantly acquiring, but also retaining. It's really, really important that you retain. And also, if you're not losing customers, then you can forecast your future revenues much more easily, which allows you to invest more in your business, raise money more easily. Retention is key. And retention rates are something that investors really look at. They want to know that people not only buy, but they stay. And then the final piece that I think people forget about some of the time is that your loyal customers can be your best friends as you grow your business. They give you constructive feedback. They tell you what they need. They tell you what's not working because they see you as a partner, and you should see them as a partner. So you can bring them into your product development process. You can bring them into your business strategy process, and they will support you and they'll give you ideas. They become partners to you because they want you to be successful because they love what you do. Okay. That's why we create customer loyalty, and I think it's probably quite obvious that it is really important from all of that. So how do you create customer loyalty? Well, I thought this picture kind of really summarized it quite nicely. But customer loyalty comes from people not only being satisfied with the product. Satisfaction is like a baseline. Quality is not enough to make people loyal, but it should be something you need to focus on. You should think, how can I create a really high quality product or service that people love? What people look for when they think about being loyal to a brand is they're looking for that wow factor. They're looking for that exceptional customer experience. They want to feel that they're cared for, that you want them to have a good experience. They want to feel that they trust you and you're going to help them and that you listen to them. And so customer experience starts even before you make the sale. Customer experience starts in the sign-up process, the support functions as you're going through that sale. It's the experience of being handheld through the kind of the onboarding process, and then it goes beyond the sale. The one thing you don't want to ever do is sell somebody something and drop them. And I had an experience of this recently, really good customer experience when I did a meditation course. So I signed up to this meditation course, and even before I could sign up to it, I had to jump on a 1 hour Zoom call with the guy who was running it to really set expectations about the program, what we're going to get out of it, how we should prepare. So we've got this kind of pre-sale customer experience. And then we got there, we had 4 days of meditation training, which was great, but that was kind of the product that I'd spent money on. And then afterwards, they had this follow-up. So not only did they say, if you ever have a question, you can reach out to us, but the trainer also set up an email service. So every week I get an email from this organization reminding me about why meditation is great, how I can get a good experience from it, questions I might have about the experience I'm having meditating. And it's a really good example of that ongoing customer experience and support, which means that I now advocate for this meditation company, which is called London Meditation Centre, to everyone, because I just think it was such a great experience. I've been wowed by that experience. So this is how do you make them feel special? And I'm going to talk in a second about how we did that at WhiteHat and how we did that at Hired. But I think it's important just to sort of talk up front about some of the things that people look for and that creates customer loyalty. This piece about clarity and speed of communication is really critical. So when you're selling a product or a service, things are going to go wrong. Maybe the product breaks. Maybe the service doesn't quite go to plan. We had lots of experiences at WhiteHat, for example, of candidates not turning up to interview, or the training session that had been scheduled being scheduled for the wrong time, or somebody forgetting to book a meeting room. These things happen. It's life. People are human. But the most important thing is the clarity and speed of communication. So tell people what's happened, tell them the truth about what's happened, and tell them how you're going to fix it. People are much happier if they know that something's gone wrong quickly and how you're going to solve it than if you kind of bluster and sort of try and cover it up. The no surprises rule is one of the key ways to create a great customer experience. They may not like that something's gone wrong, but they're not going to hold it against you if you're honest and you figure out how you're going to fix it. But I would say tell people straight away. Don't let them find out before you have the opportunity to tell them. The making them feel special will be dependent on your business. There are lots of ways to do that: incentives, referrals, and helping them get out of the experience what they want. But another way is community, and I'll talk a bit more about that later, how the community can make them feel special, make them feel part of something bigger, and how it can actually augment the customer loyalty and the customer experience and really make them brand advocates. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Here we go. So I wanted to share some pictures with you because I think it's more fun to show you some of the early days of WhiteHat. So as you can see, it doesn't look particularly glamorous. This was a pretty sketchy room on the 7th floor of a building that's since been pulled down, and candidates signed up to a static website or called us on the phone. We didn't actually have a platform initially, And they physically came into our office and had what we called a kickoff day, where they would learn about apprenticeships, they'd learn about the process of an apprenticeship, they'd learn about the recruitment process, and we'd talk to them about what they wanted to get out of the experience and how to prepare for interviews. Now, it doesn't look glamorous. There was a lot of paper and pens. We didn't have fancy laptops or anything, but we had people who really cared. And we got such great feedback from the candidates who came to our kickoff days, because they felt cared for, they felt supported, they felt somebody had actually taken the time to give them advice that they'd never heard before about how to prepare for an interview or how to think about building their careers. And it was a real wow experience. And I think this quote from Nick kind of summarizes that. I think that's really key. And then as we grew the business, we were able to offer more wow experiences. So we were able to take them on, take them to different events. We had more the best employers out there, so people could go and do like road shows and see what it was like to work in companies before they even attended. And then we built this community around our apprenticeship, so our apprentices could connect with each other and go on social events, and we got them tickets to march at London Pride, and they got this incredible experience. And so they became, they have become very, very strong advocates for White Hat, and they feel like they're White Hat apprentices in the same way, many of you will feel like, if you're a City University student, that's part of your identity. And then some of our apprentices even wrote about their experience in national press or on blogs, because they just felt it was a defining moment in their life, and they really felt they'd had this amazing experience of not only being trained but also being supported to change their lives. And that's what we wanted to give them. And at WhiteHat, so going back, that we had a slightly different thing, because a lot of our candidates were actually quite successful. They're probably a bit further along in their career. They were they were being hounded by recruiters. They knew that they were in demand, but we still felt that we could give them a wow experience. The way we did that was we actually had somebody called a talent advocate, whose job it was to just support that person through their recruitment experience, because everyone hates recruitment. I've been a recruiter, so I can say that, like, it doesn't necessarily have the best reputation. So we wanted these people, these talent advocates, to be on the side of the candidate. We wanted them to candidates' best interests every single day, to offer them coaching, to give them neutral advice about which roles to take based on what they wanted to do, to challenge and support them. And so every candidate got a talent advocate who was there for them. We did a lot to support on information. So this point about transparency, about salaries, we wanted people to have data and information that could support them in making their decisions, whether as an employer or as a candidate. And then we would send both candidates and employers this box. You can see on the right-hand side, this box of goodies when they got hired. So on their first day of work, when they started, they got a box of champagne, Dom Perignon, in fact, vintage Dom Perignon, chocolate. They got books, and they got some hired swag in this great box. It landed on their desk on their first day, and their boss got a box as well. And it was this kind of like wow experience, and people would post about it on social media. And it was a way for us to sort of create that moment of people going, oh wow, that was just like such an incredible experience. And when you're thinking about customer experience, you want to have these kind of wow moments. You want to think about, how do you create these moments of connection and these moments of experience that people will remember, these kind of memorable moments. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of how you can create that experience. And whether you're focusing on the candidate or an employer, you need to think about what the motivations are of those customers and what they will care about. So an example of that, just on the employer side, to give an example, would be if you're speaking to an HR manager, you're trying to sell into HR, but the ultimate decision maker might be the CFO. You want to think about the different motivations of the CFO versus the HR manager. So the HR manager might want to further their personal career. They might want to connect with other members of the HR community across London. They might want to look good in front of their boss. They might want their quota of hiring to be hit. And your job as their customer success agent or their account manager is actually to make them successful. So you want to put their interests first above making a sale. And if you do that, the sale will come because you made them feel good, you've built that relationship, and you've helped their personal motivations be achieved as well as the company motivations. It's really important. I know we're kind of running out of time, so please stop me if we're going to go over. But I did want to touch a little bit on customer experience measurement, because if you are going to raise money from VCs or angels, they're going to ask you about how you measure customer experience, how do you measure customer loyalty, how do you know if people love what you do and your brand. So again, this will be slightly different depending on your business, but I thought it was helpful to sort of talk a little bit about what we looked at, particularly at WhiteHat. So from the apprentice side, we looked at completion rate, the number of apprentices who completed their apprenticeship, the number that continued on to a further apprenticeship. We've also looked at NPS, or Net Promoter Score, all the way through their apprenticeship. So we looked at Net Promoter Score during their recruitment process, and Net Promoter Score during their apprenticeship, and Net Promoter Score at the end of their apprenticeship. Because those are different experiences, and we want to see whether or not they would recommend WhiteHat to a friend at any of those points. Now, just a sort of health warning on Net Promoter Score, if you never used it as a metric. Net Promoter Score measures the number of people who are promoters, the number of people who are detractors, and then people who kind of fall in the middle of this 10-point scale are called are kind of neutral. They're neither promoters or detractors, and it's a score that ranges from -100 to 100. So anything above 0 is good. I think Apple's Net Promoter Score is about 50. So if you have a really high Net Promoter Score, which we did for our recruitment process for apprentices, it was about 79 at one point. You can see whether you're having a really good customer experience. Now, there is one health warning around Net Promoter Score, that how you send out the question, when you send out the question of, would you recommend the product, the service to a friend, it can really affect the result. If you put smiley faces in different places, that can really affect how people respond. And there's a cultural element. So in the States, people tend to give 9s and 10s, which are like high promoters. They love this product. Everything's amazing and they love it. Whereas in the UK, people tend to be a bit more conservative about their scores. Like a 7 is great. I very rarely give like a 9 or a 10 for many products. And unfortunately, unless you give a 9 or a 10, you're not a promoter. So if you give a 7, you're a neutral and it doesn't count. So it's just a health warning on Net Promoter Scores. You'll probably see it a lot as you think about building businesses, but it does come with a strong health warning. Now, on the employer side, one of the key things that venture capital firms look for is something called net negative churn. So this is a score, this is a metric that really measures the additional revenue that you generate from customers compared with the amount that's lost from churn. So in other words, how much revenue you're getting from new customers, from existing customers, and how much more revenue you're getting from both of those than you're losing from people who are churning. So it's a negative net churn because it's better if more people are buying from you rather than churning. So that's a metric that people look at, and it's focused really on it kind of expansion revenue versus lost revenue. So I can talk a bit more about that. There's another one which is kind of net retention rate, which SaaS businesses sometimes use. That's another metric that you can look at to measure kind of customer experience and customer loyalty. So that's something we can talk a bit more about in the questions if we have time for it. I'm very aware that I'm running over. I did want to talk a bit about community, because community is something that can really augment your brand and your customer experience, and it can be a hugely positive thing for the company as well. It can give you enduring customer loyalty, but it can also give you feedback on your product, because it becomes a kind of communication tool with your users. I could spend an hour talking about community, and I think there are people who are much better placed to do so than me. So I'm just going to touch on briefly how kind of building community can actually help kind of customer loyalty and customer acquisition. I do think it's important to remember that communities form because customers love your product or service and identify with it. They shouldn't be seen as a marketing machine. Sometimes people think, let's create a community and then we can blast them with emails and ask them lots of questions. And it's a kind of push to the community, or it's a pull from the community. But communities exist for the people in the community. They don't exist to serve the company. So when you think about the WhiteHat community, which is our WhiteHat apprentice community, that exists to create connections between apprentices. It's about building those relationships between apprentices. It's about giving them access to opportunity, to social events, to leadership opportunities. It's about them. It's not about us. Now, of course, there are sort of advantages for WhiteHat in being associated with that community, but it is about that identity for the apprentice and building it for them. So that's just something really important to remember. The other thing is, if you're going to build a community around your product, you do need to be prepared for the fact that you are giving your users a voice and they expect to be listened to. It does change the dynamic between the company and the customer. So if you are going to create a community, you need to be aware of that. They will expect to be listened to. They'll expect to be involved in co-creating the product and service. But if you do so and they have a great experience, they'll become representatives, advocates, and they'll start talking about your brand more broadly. It's a really great way to sort of augment the company brand. I think by kind of building a community that fosters that kind of constructive customer to brand and customer to customer conversation, you'll have lots of insights on how to continually improve your offering. So it becomes a product development tool as well. And I think empowering them further sort of increases their loyalty to the brand as well. And I just put in here a couple of examples of organizations apart from WhiteHat that I think have done a really good job of creating community. I talked a bit about Glossier and some of the ways that they kind of create social proof and create community. But other organizations that I personally love are Beauty Pie. They've really created a community around, you know, the experience of getting these boxes and being part of this exclusive membership and getting access to these products at great prices. And then there's this wow experience if you get your box with the product you've bought and they say it's Pie Day and they want you to tweet about it or post pictures about it. And if you do that, you can get additional perks. And then Peloton, I think I'm a massive fan of Peloton. I have a Peloton. It's been a savior during lockdown. And what's amazing about Peloton is not just you've got a bike with essentially an iPad on it, but it's actually the experience of being part of a bigger community. And what Peloton did an amazing job of was actually going to where the community was. So they created a Facebook group, an official Facebook group, which is the one down here. But then what they found was people started creating these unofficial Facebook groups. So you had the Peloton Mums, and then you had the UK Peloton group, and then you had Peloton Veterans. And then people started putting a hashtag for this kind of group on their Peloton profile. And then people started following each other. And you'd find that these whole, what they call tribes of people who've never met, but they share something in common. They share an identity in common, apart from having a Peloton, would show up on the same rides at the same times and would support each other. And so they've been able to build this community where people feel, you know, incredible loyalty towards Peloton because of the community, and they talk about it. And then, as they say here in this tweet, they use that community to source ideas for apparel, for new rides, new products, and also for, you know, how they're going to develop the service going forward. So some final thoughts, and then I'll stop. So you might have time for a few questions. Customer loyalty is absolutely critical for long-term growth and success. You can't just keep acquiring customers and hoping that, you know, that one buy, even if they have a different experience, is going to help you grow in the long term. Particularly if you're dealing with corporate customers, it's very important to retain every customer that you get, because it's so expensive to actually acquire a new customer. So thinking about the customer experience from day one is going to be critical. And then selling to an existing customer is much easier. And what people look for is that kind of expansion revenue that you are able to achieve from your existing customer base. A happy customer is a customer who believes in your company. They believe that your company, it gives them a great product, a great service, a great experience, a wow experience. They believe your company goes above and beyond, and they can become advocates, and that can act as an acquisition mechanism because they talk about you. That word of mouth advocacy can be hugely powerful in helping you to acquire new customers. Just an aside on that, with Peloton, they give you a referral code, which gives you £100 towards merchandise, Peloton apparel. I have a lot of workout clothes that say Peloton on now. And I've talked about my Peloton so many times that all my friends now have Pelotons. Well, not all of them, but like a bunch of them have got Pelotons. So I've been given additional referral codes. So I always want to talk about it. And that means that they've been able to acquire more customers. And so sort of in summary on all of this, I think is this kind of equation, because you've got to have an equation in there somewhere, that customer loyalty is a product of a quality product, a wow experience, ongoing support and communication, and if it makes sense, community. But you can't force the creation of a community. You have to create a community for the people in the community and not for the company. And I'll leave it there. See if you have any questions. Oh, I can't hear you, Alex. Alex, we can't hear you. I think you're on mute.
Complete fail. Complete fail. I was trying to give you an applause there, Sophie, and I failed. So there you go. There's a real one. There's a real one. Thank you so much for that. That was really, really insightful. And just the experience that you've brought to, well, the experience that you've gained from all of those different functions, and also some of those examples. I'm wondering whether I should look up Peloton now, though. That's the...
But if you do, I've got a referral code. So
I thought you might say that. Fantastic. We've got a couple of questions that have come in, so I don't know if you mind taking a few.
Sure, of course.
Here we go. This is a great one from James Rendell. Thank you, Jane, for your question. How did you acquire your first client at WhiteHat?
Phone bashing. I'm afraid to say. So at the beginning, like acquiring your first customer is really hard because even though you believe in what you're doing, you have to have that belief that somebody wants to buy the product. So our first customer on the employer side was a small business, and it involved a lot of us going down and sort of explaining what we were trying to do and building that relationship. So early days, you have to really invest in that relationship. As you get bigger and your brand gets bigger, more people call you. They've heard about you. They think you're good. They want to work with you. At the beginning, they're basically buying you. They are buying into you. And so this is why integrity and trust and honesty is so important, because they may not know anything about your product and service. They may not know anyone who's used it, and you've just got to kind of sell them on yourself and why what you're doing is going to be better than anything that they've ever experienced before, and how you're going to support them. And you do have to spend more time with those early customers, giving them that ongoing support, even if they're tiny organizations, than you will later. So there is a big difference in the amount of time you need to spend with like enterprise customers, usually in SMEs. But in the early days, you are going to need to start focusing on SMEs, because that's where you're going to get business. And you need to spend an inordinate amount of time kind of giving them that customer support and service right at the beginning.
Great answer. So I've just noticed there's a Halloween balloon
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Sorry.
I'm just going to say on the candidate side, actually, that was the interesting thing. So we just put up a website and people came. So we knew that there was demand from young people. We knew that people wanted this. They were crying out for kind of high quality apprenticeships, working at the best companies, doing these kind of qualifications. But we did have, there was quite a challenging sell into companies to start with, until we were able to prove that apprenticeships weren't what they thought they were.
And I suppose for any small companies on the line right now, or large, you know, apprenticeships are a very good route for finding some of the best talent. And WhiteHat, I've heard, are pretty good at doing it. Another question, we've got one around what's the difference between a customer falling in love with you and just liking you? Maybe this goes back to the Net Promoter Score. And how can you retain, what's the difference? How can you get them to love you?
I think the Net Promoter Score can help you identify those people who love you and like you, though again that health warning is really important, because if you do a survey and people give you a 7 or 8, I would encourage you to call, not only call your promoters, but call the people who are in the neutral zone and ask them like what you could do better and why they didn't give you an 8 or a 9. You'll find that quite a few people go, oh no, I love it. I just never give more than a 7 for anything. So that's why they say take it with a pinch of salt. How do you create a customer who loves you? I think this is where the experience comes in, you know, that creating that wow experience, that special experience, whether that's when you're selling to them, sending them, like doing your research on them, finding out that they did a talk about football, you know, they're a pub quiz master, or I don't know. And then when you go and meet them, maybe you found out they like Man United. And when you go and meet them in person, you take like a Man United card that you saw, or the paper that has something on it. And it's these moments where you sort of make that personal connection, that you show them that you care, and that builds that kind of feeling of connection and championship that's really important. I don't think you always need to give people an amazing product. By the way, I mean tech product. It doesn't have to be an all singing, all dancing tech product for them to become loyal customers, to love you. Actually, a lot of the time people love you because of the service that you give them, because of the experience you give them, above and beyond the product. Now, sometimes they do love the product, but for a lot of businesses, actually, it's that human element, or that above and beyond, that really is the game changer for moving people from a yeah, I like it to God, I love it. I just it's yeah, I can't live without it, and I've got to tell everyone about it.
Very good answer. We've got a couple more questions. If anybody has more questions, then please use the Q&A thing in Zoom. The other one is, you mentioned earlier in the talk about direct sales.
Yeah.
Where does LinkedIn fall into that now?
I'm going to take that as being, how do you use LinkedIn to do so?
Yeah, I think that's a good way.
So, so I use LinkedIn as a research tool, more than a connection tool. Obviously, what it can do is it can show you really quickly who knows that person that you're trying to get to. But you have to be really careful with LinkedIn. It can become quite spammy. So if I get messages from people I don't know, and they send me a generic email, in-mail, I never open it, and I never accept connections from somebody that I haven't met in person, or who hasn't tailored their introduction in a way that means that maybe we cross paths, right, in some way, shape, or form, or they have something that I really do care about. So if you're going to send emails, you need to make sure they're super tailored. And by tailored, I don't just mean like, hi, Sophie, I see that you were the founder of WhiteHat, and then you're now at Index. Like, be like, hey, Sophie, I saw that you were the founder of WhiteHat, and I heard you speak at this seminar, and this thing you said really resonated with me. I'd love to talk to you about X because of Y, right? So you're very tailored about why, like how you know them, what you know that they care about, and why what you want to talk to them about is going to be relevant. So that's really important. If you can get warm intros, that's the best way of getting a connection, or even being able to reference somebody in your email that you have in common. But if you are going to send emails, the tip that I heard was and you're going to go after the C-suite, so you're going to email a CEO or a CMO or something, send it at the weekends. During the week, most C-level people don't have time to be responding to messages on LinkedIn. But on Saturday or Sunday morning, they might be sitting there having a coffee while their kids run havoc in the house, and they flip onto LinkedIn, and that's when they read messages. So I've had more success getting in front of people from sending weekend LinkedIn messages than anything else.
All of those C-level people now be like, darn it, Sophie, they're sending me all those messages at the weekend now. But I'm getting great products. Anyway, we've got two more. We've got loads of questions coming through now. It always happens, doesn't it? Right at the end.
Yeah, sure.
So first one, this is from Ono. Hello, Sophie. Thanks for the talk. Very insightful. My question, what are the key points for the VC's investment decision within WhiteHat? Why did they invest in you?
Okay, so when you're thinking about raising investment, it depends. What VCs look for really depends on the stage you're raising at. So there's pre-seed, there's seed, Series A, Series B, Series C. So what they look for really depends on where their focus sits. And also there's a little bit of a difference between UK or European and US VCs broadly, and that is generalizing a little bit. But when you think about the seed stage or the pre-seed stage, what they're looking for is they're looking for the level of ambition of the founders. They want to know why you guys are going to be the ones to win. They want to know what problem you're trying to solve, and you need to be able to really clearly explain what problem you're trying to solve, and like broadly how you plan on solving it. They want to know how big the market is and how much of the market you think you can take. And they want to see that there is some level of traction. Now, traction doesn't have to be revenues, but it needs to be showing that people like want to need this. So whether that's you've got a pilot set up with a company, or you've put up a static website and you've got loads of people who've signed up, or you've done a bunch of research and like everyone's desperate for this thing, whatever it is. It really depends on your company. I'm really sorry, it's hard to generalize here, but what they're looking for is size of market, size of opportunity, traction of some sort. They want clarity on your strategy, but they don't need you to have like you don't need to have answers to every single thing. And then they look at the people, and they really want to see that you're credible and that you that they buy into you. So when you go to speak to a seed stage VC, you need to have your game face on. You need to sell. You need to be prepared to answer some difficult questions about how you made decisions about your career, about your risk appetite, about your co-founding relationship. They are essentially buying into you because you may have an amazing idea, but ultimately at that stage it's all about the execution. When you're looking at Series A, they start looking more at the metrics. So they want to start seeing customer growth, retention rates. They want to see data, and they also want to see more clarity on how you're going to spend the money and roadmap and the talent you need. And they want to at Series A really see what kind of talent you've been able to attract, because it's a very good indication of how good you are as founders, how good you are as salespeople, and how much the product and opportunity resonates with people. So don't ever discount the importance of talent in these decisions. And then I think a post Series A is very much a case of traction. They want to see exponential growth. They want to see how this opportunity can expand outside of the home market, so probably internationally. A lot of companies want to know, a lot of VCs want to know why you are going to win in this market versus your competitors. Like most VCs want to bet on the organization that's going to be the winner in this space. And they want to know why you guys are going to be the winner, whether that's you think you've got better technology, better people, better, route to market. So hopefully that answers the question. And I hope
so.
when they invested in WhiteHat, they were looking, they were looking at you and I, and looking at the team we created, and they were looking at the size of the opportunity as well as the economics.
Wonderful. We've got 2 more questions. Have you got a couple more minutes?
I can answer to you. Sure.
Great. Okay. Well, far away. So this is from John Paul Denis. You indicated your first client was an SME. We target SMEs and wondered what your thoughts were of them as a segment. So when you're isolating them as a particular segment.
I think there's a huge amount of opportunity in the SME market. It's a very different sales process to enterprise sales. There is some glamour in selling to the big corporates, but there's also a lot of challenge in doing so. The sales cycle is really long. You have to invest a lot of time and energy in finding the champions within the business, finding where the pots of money sit. Huge amount of account management needs to happen. They tend to be more demanding. So they tend to not want the off-the-shelf solution. They want you to adapt to them. And when you're a small company, actually, that can be really dangerous. So if you are a small company and your first big client is BP, for example, I always get a bit nervous that you're going to basically build a product for that big corporate rather than building what, both what you have the vision, what you basically building the products and service, the company that you envisioned, but also building for that one client rather than building for the mass market, and that will limit your growth ultimately. So I think starting with SMEs is a really good strategy. You learn a lot. You can make more mistakes. It's not going to kill you if you mess up, because you will. They are easier to get over the line overall. But it really depends on your business and what you're trying to sell. It's again it's hard to generalize without specifics.
That's great. Thanks, Sophie. And then we've got one from Ghana. This is quite a good question. How did you know when you had the right idea with WhiteHat?
So with WhiteHat, I think there's a feeling, there has to be this excitement about, as a founder, about the problem you're trying to solve. You can't get hung up on the solution. You'll hear that again and again from people, that you have to be excited about the problem, not the solution, because the solution will change. You'll have to pivot, you'll have to change your list of customers. You can't be like, I really want to build this widget and it has to be like this. You have to be like, I really care about this problem. So whether that problem is, how do we improve, social mobility, or how do we help people adapt, find the right jobs, or how do we give people the best an experience of feeling more like themselves. You've got to have this big problem, how to help people handle their mental health during a COVID lockdown, right? You have this big question, and you have to be excited about that, because you could be spending the next 10 years thinking about that problem. So that's the first thing. You personally are excited about this. And then you need to do customer interviews. You need to speak to people who will buy it, the people who use it, and you can gauge from their reactions. People are like, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for. Or you put up, as we did with WhiteHat, this static page and people started calling. Or you find, as we did with, so actually the Hired story is actually a really good one. I'm not one of the founders of Hired, but the 3 Hired guys, the 3 Hired founders, they met in a pub. They were talking about how hard it was to hire developers. And they came up with this idea of flipping the model and almost creating an auction approach. Now, so the first Hired website was actually called Developer Auction, and it was hacked together over a weekend. It was basically a form where developers put in their details, and then it kind of created a list of candidates, and then companies could make interview requests, but that's all it did. And then it kind of connected them. And they launched it was an American company. They launched it over the weekend of the first weekend of Burning Man. And they got 130 connections or something between developers and companies. And so they knew they had something. People wanted this product. People liked it. It was terrible. I mean, I've seen a picture of it. It did not look pretty. The user experience wasn't great, but it was simple. and it worked, and people wanted that service. They were sick of applying to jobs, and they wanted companies to apply to them, and companies didn't care. They were like, these are good developers, I'll use it. So you got to test it, and all you need is a piece of paper. You don't need a lot of technology. You need an Excel spreadsheet, a phone, piece of paper. You can test the idea that way. If people won't buy it or use it, you don't have a business.
There we go. I think that's brilliant advice. One of the things that we always say is get out of the, go and meet your customers, get out of the building. You can do that during lockdown, but only with certain people. But brilliant advice and a great way to close the seminar. So thank you very much, Sophie, for those brilliant insights and for joining us. It just leaves me with saying thank you very much. And let's see if this works. Come on, we can do it. There we go. Has that worked? Can you hear a clap? Doesn't matter.
Not really.
Never
But
mind.
I'll sit here in my room and pretend that you're clapping. So.
Yes, yeah, there was meant to be a digital clap, but yeah, it works sometimes. Anyway, thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of the week. And thank you to our wonderful audience members and for those that have asked the questions too. This will be a recording that will be hosted on our website afterwards. So hopefully you can go back and revisit all of that insightful wisdom that Sophie's just given us. So without any further delay, we'll close the seminar and say thank you very much and good night. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.